So my name is Gena Kirori. I am a reporter attached to NTV. I specialize on crime and investigative stories, but of course, right now with the political period, we're experiencing a lot of, just a lot of election material. But basically, yes, as a reporter, I focus mainly on crime and investigative stories.
Okay. So we'll just get straight into the questions. We'll just start with the general question. What is your understanding of stereotyping?
Okay, so my understanding of stereotyping is basically using a certain characteristic or a certain element about a person against them. So not for the greater good, but rather against them. So this could be stereotyping based on gender. It could be stereotyping based on even financial gains. You know, whether a person is living in amongst poverty lines or even amongst wealthier lines. It could also be to do with race. It could be to do with colorism. So there are many forms of stereotyping, but basically when I think of it, I believe that that's what it is.
Okay. Have you experienced stereotyping on a personal level or just witnessed it with some of your colleagues at work? And if you have an example, if you're comfortable to share.
Yes, so I definitely do think that, and I don't think it's a unique case necessarily in the media, but I've definitely experienced gender stereotyping. For example, when I go for some assignments, and you'll find it's very male dominated. So you're trying to ask a question or raise your hand, and then someone skips over you because you're a woman, and then they go straight to the gentleman there. So sometimes you find that type of stereotyping, and you know, at first I thought it was all in my head. I thought perhaps I'm maybe overthinking it, or it's not really happening as I'm seeing it. But then later on, I was told you need to be as aggressive as a man that you can get your question answered. So when someone mentioned that to me, it was actually the communications assistant. I won't mention the particular assignment, but the communications assistant of the person I was interviewing told me next time you need to be as aggressive as a man because he's skipping over you because you're sort of standing out because you're a woman. So yeah, I've definitely endured that type of gender stereotyping. Also, just a bit of colorism, but I don't think that one has been so deep, you know, just being told, oh, because we're in light skin, or is it funny assignment, so yeah, those types of stereotypes I've definitely encountered.
Okay, so you mentioned the gender stereotype, and when we're doing our research, there's obviously the one that has been so predominant about sex cells, you know, in advertising and PR. Is it still does it still have a chokehold in the media till today, or are we moving past that? Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think the sex sells in media. I don't think that will ever stop being an element that's projected. But what I will say is that it's definitely minimized. And I think that the audience is now hungrier for more. I definitely think that people who are watching are demanding more and better from the media. So as opposed to before where you could just be a pretty face or a handsome face going in front and reading the news, now they want content. Now they want what is it that you have inside of you that's going to keep someone glued? Because now we're competing with the internet. We're competing with bloggers even, you know. So the element of just sitting there reading news or reporting news has left. You need to have content. You need to have more knowledge about you. So I think the sex sells element is definitely simmering down, but it's still there.
It's still there, yeah. And obviously, it's like you said, it won't really go away because of that aspect. So other than sex sells, there's also the predominance of feminism and how, you know, women want empowerment. Do you feel like it has had an impact on the male gender as well?
Yes, and I think I would say, not to sound like I am bashing the movement, it's had both good and bad consequences within, particularly the media industry. The good consequences as a result of, you know, the fight for equality, the push for equity, which I am a big believer in. I believe in equity, not equality. I think has been that more women are being given a seat at the table, as opposed to before where they were given very minimal roles, very roles that seemed even almost submissive. So I think
Yeah.
that's a good aspect that it's had. I'm seeing more women in leadership positions within the newsroom, which I think is a good thing. However, I think negative impact has been there's sort of been a neglect on the male reporters and the male individuals within the newsroom. One who and sometimes are not given as much attention as they deserve for certain niches or certain beats in the newsroom. So, for example, as a health reporter, you find that it had this almost opposite effect where if a man wants to pursue health reporting, he's told, wear at your mama or something, um, or if they want to pursue stories that seem like they're more soft or nurturing, sorry, they're immediately told, no, 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 those are for women. So I've also spoken to some male colleagues in the newsroom who have told me that they neglected doing certain stories because they were afraid of the backlash. Another aspect is also there is sexual harassment in the newsroom, yes, but there was a recent report that showed that men are also suffering from it. And that article was not given the seriousness it deserved because it's happening to men. So I think the push for equity and equality, for equity, I beg your pardon, has definitely had some good consequences, such as giving women more leadership positions that they rightfully deserve. But the negative consequence has been that we're sort of leaving a gap between the boy child and also the girl child within the newsroom. Yeah.
There are certain cultures where, the female gender, they don't really uphold them as people who are important. So whenever you're going into or going to investigate or do a story, how has that experience been for you? How has it impacted how you even write the story itself, just based on how they view women in their culture?
Yeah, I think there are definitely some cultures that I've covered who you can immediately tell there's a demeaning attitude towards women and girls in their culture. Even something as simple as if I put a microphone in front, a man will like almost sideline the woman or the girl next to him and now go in front and speak on camera, when really the microphone was meant for that woman. So it's definitely changed how I view my stories in terms of I make sure that if I go for a story, I'm going to try and get a man and a woman to give me their comments. If absolutely I cannot find a woman, that's okay. But I've made it a very intentional priority that you need to balance those equations because there are stories that I used to go for where men were given the dominance and I would just allow it, because I was like, I don't want to offend anyone in this culture. But I realized that as journalists, we have a calling not to a particular culture or anything, it's for the greater good. It's for getting objectivity and balance. So I go in with that mindset these days where I say, I'm not really coming here to cover culture. I'm here to cover balance. I'm here to cover objectivity. So that means giving both the man and the woman an opportunity to respond.
Yeah. And you see that is on your part as a reporter, as a journalist. When you bring the story into the newsroom, assuming like your editor is biased in that direction, how do you fix that balance? Do you feel like there are situations where you can be put down to, not be as objective because your editor views a different way?
Yeah, definitely. I think that struggle you'll definitely bump into people every now and then. Certain editors or certain people, even reporters, who will sort of dilute that objectivity. But I think what I usually say is I cannot go above and beyond not really above and beyond, sorry. I cannot force someone to think the way that I think, but I can make my opinion known. So when I come from a story and I explain to them, this and this and this are the issues of the story, and I feel like this is how we need to balance it objectively. It is up to you as my leader and as my senior to take up that advice for consideration. If they don't, then I usually just accept and say that I've done the best that I can. But the worst thing you can ever do is keep quiet about an issue or not raising a particular issue. So I really do try my best to try and make that known, but sometimes the advice is not always taken. Sometimes you see it going on air or something, or even in the newspaper, because I know I've also had those complaints, even in different media houses about that issue. So yeah, I just usually just make it known, be vocal about it and leave it at that.
So other than gender, because in our research, gender holds the bigger part of stereotyping in media, we also identified religious stereotypes, and I think I'll let Ahlam ask those questions. It'll be easier.
Alright.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So, okay, the media is wide enough and it does employ different religions. Do you think it's dominated to employ one religion as opposed to another? For example, is it like they do employ majority of the Muslims and leave alone like the Christians or maybe the Hindus?
Sorry, so if I'm getting you correctly, you're asking if we're
Okay, so is it that
streamlined
yes, like is it like one oriented kind of a religion that is being employed at most and then leaving the other religions behind? So for like for like for example, for a news anchor, they need to be that beautiful lady. And for example, if they think of a Muslim, they'll be like, she won't come off hijab, maybe she won't agree to wearing a miniskirt. So does it relate to them saying now we need to be only employing Christians because they can abide to our rules and not the Muslims?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a dominance in terms of religion in the newsroom, and I'll definitely say it's Christians, mostly Christians who are employed in the newsroom. But I also do think that there's a paradigm shift that's happening to try and negate those issues. But I don't think we're there yet. I still think we need to do much more to be able to include more religions, because like you're saying, even Hindus, Muslims, they definitely need to be incorporated more, to the extent where a recent media house, which opened recently, which is hiring more Muslims, you can see they're really taking off. They're really doing some amazing work. So I think it definitely needs to be something that needs to be considered more, that you don't just reject someone on the basis of their religion, or think that because, like you said, they can't wear certain outfits or other items of clothing, or, even maybe too much makeup or issues like that. I don't think that that needs to be the basis. So have there been measures to try and incorporate more? Yes, because in the newsroom, I can count quite a number of people who are of different religions, but we're not there yet. We still have so much more work to do to be able to include more religions in the newsroom.
Okay. So do you think so? That's one of the recommendation you're giving, that they really need to sensitize the issue in terms of having like a balanced kind of a religious employees in the media, right?
Yeah, I definitely think so.
So, Hazel, I think I've exhausted that part of the religious.
Okay.
Okay.
So now, on a general basis, how might the media balance, freedom of expression, especially when it relates, its public interest, as long as it's public interest, and being ethical in terms of your representation?
Freedom of expression versus
being ethical in terms of your representation. Yeah.
Okay. So I think in that instance, we really need to be governed, and there's a lot of self-governance that needs to happen more in the newsroom. I think oftentimes we wait for the audience to get back to us and tell us, oh, you did this and this wrong. There needs to be more self-governance in the newsroom, and the only way this can come about is by literally internalizing all the guidelines and principles that govern the journalism profession. And this goes back to time immemorial, whether it's timeliness, whether it's impact, proximity, oddity, whether it's the balanceness, the balance of doing a story, the objectivity aspect, and whether it's truthful. So I think oftentimes we lose sight, and it's very easy in a profession like this where you lose sight of the goal, which is to deliver the truth and to expose and reveal and explain and educate to the audience about certain matters or topics. We often lose sight of that. That's the issue that I have sometimes in the media. I think there needs to be more incorporation of self-governance that needs to guide the principles of journalism by every journalist who is practicing in the sector. I think that's how to balance freedom of speech, which is completely okay. It's a good thing. But even when you have an opinion, make sure it's an informed one. Make sure it's one informed by fact, and one that's informed by truth, and one that's informed by balance and objectivity as a journalist.
Yeah, that the idea of losing that sight of what you're your work is and you're duty bound. There's the aspect of humans really crave entertainment. And so
Yes.
there's the idea that, as long as the story is bringing in people, bringing in flow of people, can you say that there's a level of stereotyping for comedic relief that can be allowed, or do we say like stereotyping in itself just completely off?
Yeah, I do think that there's a special branch of journalism in which stereotyping can be allowed, but it also needs to be exercised with intelligence and also and caution. So if you look at certain satirical shows, like shows that are based on satire, like it
Yeah.
could be previously on NTV, we had Bullseye,
Yes.
where it used that there are certain stereotypes that are being projected, but not in a way that is harmful to another person or that will get them into deep trouble with maybe the community that they're from or issues like that. So I think it needs someone who's very, very seasoned, who understands the content that they're producing, and someone who is very intelligent about with how they go about it. We've also recently gotten a show here called Feel Good Friday, which is sort of like Bullseye with a different angle. So I think there are certain branches of journalism that can allow that, but they need to be exercised with caution.
Do you
Caution,
think
yeah.
even XYZ show was almost like a stereotype kind of a comedy show? XYZ.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, XYZ is definitely a stereotypical type of show. But I think to know that, you'd also need to look at the goals and the objectives behind the show, because number one thing that happens whenever you bring a show onto the television platform, you need to have an objective and a goal. So if the goal was to reveal a certain type of trend that's happening in society, there are certain things that will be able to govern that stereotyping of that. But it can't, now, for news, you can't use that because now it looks like immediately you're balanced. So it needs to be a very special branch of journalism that you're producing that content for.
Yeah. There's an idea that someone had once brought up to me, saying that as much as we would like to put much of the burden into the media, can we also put it on the people and how they filter out the information? Would we say that, or can you say that how society perceives the information they're given sometimes can be slightly off? And how can we redefine, as the media, how can we help them? And as people outside us, the audience themselves, how can they understand information as it comes in?
Wait, sorry, I don't think I've quite grasped the question. So how audiences consume the information?
Yeah, can we say that we can't really bulk the blame, so to say, on the media, but also on the audience themselves?
Okay. Yeah, I definitely think, and I've seen this happening several times, where a story will go out and the way that the audience misinterprets it completely gives the story a completely different angle that wasn't there in the first place. But I also don't think it's safe to spoon feed the audience and tell them one by one, this is what we meant, this is what we meant. I think that it needs to take also, yeah, I don't think that the media is solely to blame at times. I use at times very sparingly because there are times when we have gone wrong. But there are times when a story has gone out and the intention of the story was completely misinterpreted and taken out of context. But I do think that it's also upon the audience to criticize from a knowledgeable point of view. Case in point, sometimes I see people saying, oh, I don't watch news because I already know that they do A, B, C, D. But then you ask this person, when's the last time you watched news? And then they'll say it was 3 years ago. So, for someone who has
Lost her.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Okay. How are you?
okay. You?
I'm fine, thank you. So it's going to be a bit brief. It's not something that's hard, inshallah. So I'll make it general first. So what is your understanding about stereotyping?
Stereotyping.
Yes, especially in the media sector.
There could be a wide range of meanings or explanation.
Okay.
For instance, in the media, stereotyping is more of trying to group people and associate them with, certain characteristics or traits,
Mm-hmm.
and it can happen through, gender or age or even racism. So if you see someone, you just conclude that this person cannot do this and that, or this person can do this and that, or this person has to do this and that for him or her to attain this and that. You get?
Yes. Okay. So, have you ever experienced it, maybe at a personal level, or maybe you have witnessed someone else, especially in line of your duty?
These things have been experienced on a daily basis. For instance, personally,
Mm-hmm.
I'm from the coast.
Okay.
So they tend to think that people from the coast cannot, outdo other people who are from other places, for instance, Nairobi or, other cities. They tend to think that coastal people are lazy, and such. So that was one of the things that I experienced when I joined media, especially here in Nairobi. The assumption was that I cannot outperform myself and I cannot be in competition with other journalists, only to shock them later that I can do even better than the people whom they thought were,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I experienced that at TV. Partly because, like I said, the perception of the coastal people, and secondly, they think that any person who doesn't like to speak English is not, a learned person, so they forget that speaking English does not, it's not equal to intelligence or cleverness.
Okay. So it has always been seen that women, we are doing the gender, the gender stereotype, especially in the media, and it has always been perceived or seen that women are always on the shorter end of the stick. And with this new age of feminism, where do you stand? Do you think there's an improvement, especially in terms of how women are perceived through the medias, in terms of the stories that they cover about them?
The problem with the female gender is themselves.
Okay. I hope I'm not attacked, okay?
Because the problem is people tend to take them the way they carry themselves out, and unfortunately, most ladies, especially in the media industry, think that sexism sells, and it's the easiest way to get what you want or need, especially now that it's like people are in competition as far as who can succeed first and the likes. In the media industry, there is this thing of popularism or fame, and it's like everyone, especially ladies, want to be famous very quickly without knowing the repercussions of such. So you might find people or ladies who want to do it the shortcut way. In the end, there are consequences, That's why they say sometimes the shortcut becomes longer than the highway. You might succeed for a few days, but the consequences zitakuwa mbaya,
Yes.
Yeah, but I think ladies can do what their counterparts, normally do. It's only a matter of how you carry yourself out. Because we have seen several people, or rather several ladies who do, very good stories in terms of features, especially the features related to health and the maternal health, to be specific. And also, if they put their mind into it, then they can do anything. So I think, in a way, the negative stereotyping can go away if they want it to go away. But if they look for shortcuts to do things, and yet they can do them in the professional way, then there comes the problem. They contribute to their own negative stereotyping from their colleagues.
Okay, so moving forward to the other gender now, this is the male gender. Do you think that their representation in the media is being threatened now? The fact that you've said we have the sex cells in terms of media, especially in adverts now. Do you think now, like, the male gender feel like they're being threatened in the media?
Of course, because you'll find that when you do apply for a position and you're a male and there are females there, you have a reason to worry, because first and foremost, you'll experience this from the very time you appear during the interview. You'll see how this lady's dress, and that is a cause of concern, especially for you as a male, because it's like they have a head start, especially if you get the people who are interviewing you guys are the people who like such stuff, So it becomes very difficult for you to get the opportunity, because they know that if they give the ladies the opportunity, there'll be some kind of a payola kind of thing, give and take. So the male guys, the male are a bit disadvantaged, and it is happening all over, not only in media, in different companies. It's like the female, females are being given an upper hand without considering professionalism and the likes. For instance, in the media, you've seen some people who are given certain responsibilities to carry out, but professionally, if you look at them keenly, you'll realize that they do not have the intelligence and the experience required for such, a task.
Okay. And does the ratio of male to female reporters or even news anchor in the media, as we see it like right now, is it at a good place or does it need an improvement?
I think it's at 50-50 the way it is right now. That's how I'm seeing it. It's at 50-50 because the industry itself, it's overcrowded now. Everyone wants to become a journalist. So even if you look at the newsrooms nowadays, you'll find that there is more ladies who are coming in as opposed to what used to happen before. So I think it's at 50-50 right now. And so the only thing people can do is just to compete professionally and see what comes out from that. But as it is, the way I'm seeing it is almost a 50-50. Okay.
So now let us move on to the religious stereotypes in the media. There's a lot of stereotyping, especially when it comes to the Muslims, especially to the Islam religion. Muslims are being perceived as terrorists because of how the media cover the stories. So you as an individual, do you think the media is rightfully doing its justice in terms of equality when it does the coverage of different religion?
It's a yes and no.
Okay.
Because one, when it comes to coverage, of course, the main things that are being covered as far as the media is concerned in Kenya are the two Eids. And unfortunately, those are the only things that we Muslims have come out openly to let people know that these are some of the things that we hold dearly. So yes, because that's what we made them think, and no, because sometimes we tend to find so many programs, so many Christian programs on air as opposed to Islamic programs, and that is contributed to. I mean, that is attributed to, maybe the ownership of the media houses. Of course, a majority of them are secular, so it's only fair to them to cover what is, what they can relate to. So when it comes to Islam, it becomes a little bit problematic to cover each and every event of Muslims. For instance, if we have a Quran recitation competition of, they cannot do that unless there is someone who's a Muslim who can push for it there. But generally, of course, there is some biasness as far as Muslims are concerned in the media. We have seen the portrayal of Muslims, especially in the Western media, which is also creeping into the local media. Muslims are being portrayed as, a totally different and race and a group that has to be feared, which isn't the case. And it is possible to try and turn things around if at all the Muslims or the stakeholders generally are concerned. Because as it is, even the Muslim bodies are not very active as they're supposed to. Because sometimes you'll find that there are very important issues concerning everyone in the country, and you'll see the churches responding, with their, associations and the like, but you rarely see a Muslim body responding to such. One case is like the issue of hijab for students. There are, a number of students who had been chased away from school because of wearing the hijab. But you find that the Muslim bodies are not talking about this. So somehow we try to portray ourselves as the inferior, society. And so people take advantage of this. So I think for this to change, we need to also, as Muslims, change our mindset.
Okay.
And we also need to come out and defend our own, which we rarely do as compared to others. So, but generally, there is some kind of a biasness as far as Muslims are concerned when it comes to media coverage and the like. But it can change if at all we are committed and determined to let that happen.
Okay. So, like the last questions, are there certain situations where stereotyping can be too serious and to an extent it's being permissible? Like there's this. Okay, we have talked about like the gender, we have the religion, but at some point in time, do you think stereotyping can be permissible? 1 minute, let me open the door. 1 minute.
All right.
Oh, sorry, we can proceed.
No, it's not.
Okay. Should I repeat the question?
No. You were saying whether stereotyping can be permissible.
Yes, at some point or in a certain situation if need be.
I don't think that should be the case, although it's happening even now. Some people are using that as a means of, getting what they want or trying to make people not to get what they want. For instance, there are some other assignments. People might tell you that, you cannot go there because you're a lady, anything can happen to you, But the moment you you decide that you want to be a journalist, you need to be aware that there are some challenges. For instance, we are about to go to elections, and we know how the situation is, how the situation normally is during elections here in Kenya. So it won't be right, and it will be unfair for the male colleagues to tell the female colleagues that, no, you guys, you ladies, you're not supposed to go out because it's dangerous and the like. But they signed up to be journalists, and they know exactly what are the challenges of being a journalist, And so it's happening even now, but that shouldn't be the case. It should not be the case, and you should not be. People should not refuse to let you do some other stories because you are a Muslim, or you are a bit younger than Like for instance, there are some trainings where only the senior guys are being allowed to go. Why? Because according to them, they have more experience as opposed to you. Which shouldn't be the case, because as a journalist, we should not marginalize or segregate or other people through it, or gender or even religious backgrounds. So I think it is happening, but that shouldn't be the case. It's very unfortunate that it's happening, but professionally, I don't think that should be the case.
Okay. So you don't agree to it to be permissible, even
No.
Okay.
No, if you stereotyping in itself, it's a bad it's a bad thing. So how do you agree to stereotyping? So I don't think it's a good idea to permit it, because I don't see a situation whereby it will justify for stereotyping to be used as an excuse to so I don't think I agree with that.
Okay, so yeah, those are the few questions that we had planned for you for the day, and shukran for helping us, at least in doing our research. There's so much that we have learned from you, and we hope to make use of it when we get into the media. And now we know that it's not okay, even if a situation comes in hand, we just have to omit. Because do you think we also have maybe laws that govern stereotyping in the media?
I'm not sure, but when you learn the basics of journalism, I think there are things which we cannot say that there are directly laws that do that, but there are some things which are to be considered as far as journalism is concerned, which somehow are related to what we are talking about. But all in all, if you want to be a journalist, you need to be prepared for so many things. There are challenges here and there. There is very stiff competition. There is, what we call harassment, especially for ladies, sexual harassments and the likes. So you need to be prepared for anything and everything, psychologically, of course. Because wengine wanaingia kwa hii field and then they come to regret later that I didn't know this is what is happening. But anyway, it's an interesting field. You'll come to like it, provided you know what you want and you have your own principles. Then it's a good career choice.